would you say if someone came up to you and asked, how's your prayer life? How you doing? Are you making progress? Are you moving forward? Or are you falling back? Are you regressing? Or are you just spinning your wheels? Are you stuck? I don't know about you, but in my experience, many Christians want to live a life of prayer. We want to live a spiritual life, but we're not necessarily sure how. Even more, we're not necessarily sure what progress even looks like. What are the stages of the spiritual life? Where am I in my spiritual life? And how do I know if I am moving forward, if I am making progress? How do I know what it means to pray? In this Bible study on spiritual theology, what I tried to do was go back to square one and look at the basics of what is Christian prayer. What does prayer look like in the Bible? What does the spiritual life look like in the Bible? And what does the Catholic tradition have to teach us about the stages of the spiritual life? And one of the things I discovered when I began this class was that the spiritual life, just like our natural life, has certain stages, certain processes, certain stages that we'll go through, and that the saints and the mystics and the doctors of the church, not to mention the writings of the Old New Testaments, have a lot to teach us about what authentic prayer looks like and about what the path of the spiritual life is supposed to be. So if you've ever wondered things like, what is meditation? What is contemplation? Can I do it as a lay person? How do I pray with Scripture, Lectio Divina? What about the dark night of the soul? What does that even mean? Am I going through the dark night? How do I deal with difficulties in prayer? What do I do when prayer is dry and tasteless and I don't get any enjoyment or any pleasure out of it? How do I know what to do in those experiences to overcome difficulties in the life of prayer? And if you've ever prayed for even more than a few minutes, you'll know prayer's tough. Prayer's difficult. I need God's grace. I want to move forward, but I don't know how. This Bible study on spiritual theology is designed for specifically that purpose. In the Gospels, Jesus actually says in the story of Mary and Martha that there's one thing necessary, and that one thing is to sit at his feet, to listen to his voice. In other words, to contemplate him, to pray, to be with Christ in order to grow in holiness, to grow in love, to grow in faith and hope. So in this course on spiritual theology, what I tried to do was take the writings of the fathers, the doctors of the church, mystics such as St. John of the Cross and St. Teresa of Avila, as well as St. John Paul II, and just break it down in a way that was clear, easy to understand, but very biblical, to give you the tools that you need to make progress in the spiritual life. And I have to say that more than any other class I've ever taught, this class on spiritual theology, on prayer, on the spiritual life, on the stages of spiritual life, this class was the most transformative for me personally. And it's also been the class that I've gotten more feedback from than any other, that it helped people not just to, change their minds, to help feed their heads, but also to transform their hearts, to transform the way they lived as Christians, the way they lived as Catholics. So if you've ever wanted to move from the head to the heart, to really take on a teaching that's not just going to change your mind, but change the way you live, then this Bible study on the spiritual life, this Bible study on prayer and the stages of the Christian life is perfect for you. And one of the things you'll discover as you look at it is that God has a plan for your life mapped out. It's right there in the Bible. It's hidden in the stories of Moses, the tabernacle, Abraham, Christ in the Gospels, the mystery of the Rosary, the mystery of the Our Father, how to pray. All these basic tools of the spiritual life we will take you through in this class, so that by the time you're done with the spiritual theology, you're going to enter into a whole new world that you may not have ever seen before of the riches of the Catholic tradition on what we might call the theology of the soul. Everyone's heard of Pope John Paul II's theology of the body. What about the theology of the soul? What about the life of my soul? That's what we do in this course on spiritual theology. I hope you'll come with me and that you'll be transformed like I felt I was transformed by diving into this amazing sea of the Church's wisdom about our souls and about the spiritual life.